in that little slot. And jack, attack, car jack, wall jack, electrical jack, jack squat, jack cross, jack of the box, jackass, jack, whatever.
All the jack puns.
Now you won't forget jack.
I love it.
No, we won't.
No, we will not
Yeah.
forget that.
Is that it?
I think that's it, John.
Okay.
It's the John Ciet show. Yeah.
Well, just before I get started very quickly, so how many of you know Brandon Earl? How many don't know Brandon? Okay, so Brandon and I have known each other for 27 years, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's about that, yeah. And he still hangs out with me regularly, so you can question his sanity. Yeah, but he's joined us recently in assisting in promoting Inspiro and trying to connect you folks to the LOs of Inspiro. So if you're not currently working with Inspiro, I would suggest that you talk with him because he has all the answers relative to why you should work with Inspiro, because I believe that you should. And one of the things that he can help you do is discover how you want to create your approach to the business and how Inspiro can specifically help you, particularly in today's market. Because let's acknowledge from 20 to 21 to 22, the mortgage market, was it favorable for buyers? Ravana, was it favorable for buyers in 2021 and 22?
Yes.
The mortgage market was exceptionally favorable. It's interesting that there was a lot of hesitation there, which tells me there's not a lot of perspective in the room, which is fine. How many of you have been in the real estate industry for less than 3 years? Raise your hands. See, that's why, Brandon, because if you think about this, the interest rates that you're used to, the 3.5%, 4% interest rates, were historical lows. I've been in the business for 30 years. In fact, this month, I got in 1993. And when I got into business, interest rates were about 8.5%, pushing 9%. And historical averages are right around 8%. That's what we expect to see. So if we're hovering somewhere between 7 and 8%, that's pretty normal. And what is interesting is that if you've been in the business for 3 years or less, you think that 3.5%, 4% is normal, and that if we're pushing 8%, that somehow the sky has fallen. And that's okay, but it's good to have the perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that Brandon can do is put you in connection with some great resources and a great LO who can help you with that perspective, particularly because this is what I want to talk about today. The title of the topic was how to what? Anybody know? How to take more listings in today's market. How many of you would like to take more listings in today's market? Or maybe I should say it this way. How many of you would like to take a listing in today's market?
Yeah.
Yeah, just take a listing, please. Okay. Well, gang, look, it's really not rocket science. It's like Jim Rohn says, it's pretty simple in terms of the process, but it's not what?
Easy.
It's not easy. And the reason it's not easy because the formula is simple. The problem is we don't typically know the formula. We haven't familiarized ourselves with the formula. We don't leverage the formula. And what we do is we go back to what we already know and what we do. And so I would ask you this question. How well is the process that you're using, whether it's working with buyers or sellers, because that's what we're going to talk about today. The conversation today that we're going to have about working with sellers and getting the listing works just the same with a few tweaks when you work with buyers. Okay, so how many of you, if you take a look at the process that you're using, would say there's room for improvement or substantial room for improvement in terms of getting more buyers and sellers, and especially sellers in today's market? Say aye.
Yes.
Okay, well, then the good news is you're at the right meeting. Because I want to talk about this. I would tell you that there probably isn't a more important topic that we could cover, not just because of the market and the way that it is, but just simply because of the importance of this topic in your success in getting business in real estate. So if you want to write down a particular word to start your notes, I would write down this word. I would write down uncertainty. Uncertainty. And then I would ask you this question. Has today's market created a greater amount or a lesser amount of uncertainty for your clients? Greater. Why? Why is there greater uncertainty in today's market?
Because they're all waiting for the interest rate to go down. but
Okay.
Or prices.
know if
Prices.
Or prices, right? See, what happened is, go ahead, Luz.
But there is right now more than just the interest and the prices, just global things going on, like the Ukrainian thing, like the so many other things attacking our economy.
Right, that's fair.
The people, I think they have more in their mind than the higher rates and all of that.
I agree. You're absolutely correct,
Yeah.
Jack.
One of the biggest ones, I think, is inflation, and that puts a pause on businesses, that puts a pause on people looking to buy, because not only are the interest rates higher, but now every single thing that you buy is more expensive too.
Right.
And so that's hitting people right in the pocketbook, and people are like, is it gonna go down? Is it gonna go up? What's the ceiling? Where's,
Right. So we've got interest rates, we've got inventory, we've got wars, we've got inflation. What else? Anything else?
Politics.
Politics.
Election.
Yeah, there's an election coming up, and that always creates uncertainty. Is the current administration going to stay in the White House? Is there going to be a new one? Who's it going to be? What are their policies going to be? Is it going to be pro-business, anti-business? All of those things. If you take all of that and you look at it, which people do, right? There's more access to more information today than there ever has been. Yes or yes? I mean, when I was getting current information was Encyclopedia Britannica, right? And now when you need to know something about the world and what's going on, you just simply Google it, or it's fed to you through the various social media platforms. Yes?
Yeah.
Well, all that creates a lot of uncertainty. So why have I chosen the word uncertainty? What does that have to do with real estate? And what does that have to do with you taking more listings? Ask me that question.
What does that have to do?
Thank you. I want you to do that because I want to know that you're actually listening, Aubrey, which thank you. I know you're listening. So, and by the way, nice tie. I like that. So the reason it's important is because uncertainty leads to what?
Fear.
Yes, that's the answer. Uncertainty leads to fear. So write that down. Uncertainty leads to fear. The more uncertainty there is, the more uncertain a person is, the more what they're going to be. The more afraid, the more fearful they're going to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you identify with that on a personal level?
Yeah.
Think about that in your own life where there's a great deal of certainty, where you have certainty, whether it's in a relationship, right? Or it's in a process, whatever it is that you do. When there is certainty, there's more what? Confidence, yes. But when there's uncertainty in the relationship or uncertainty in the process, whatever it is, there's going to be greater what? Fear. So it's a question of, are we going to exist in a state of fear or a state of what? Certainty. Yes, that's the answer. So if we know that there's greater uncertainty in today's marketplace, then what your clients or potential clients need is what? Greater what? Greater certainty. And the question is, how do we create greater certainty? Here's something that's interesting, and I'll prove this by kind of talking about what we all went through over the last few years, particularly as intense as it was in 20 and 21. Anybody know the 4-letter word COVID? Anybody familiar with that? Isn't it interesting to watch what happened during COVID? Now, how many of you lived in Utah through that entire process? Anybody outside of Utah? Okay, so I have a unique perspective. I lived in California. And yeah, thank you, Jack. Yes. And I can tell you off the record, I know this is being recorded, but in California, they're insane. Okay. And what I watched and what I went through the lockdowns there, that restaurants and businesses were closed. And if you were going to get into a restaurant, you had to have a COVID vaccination card. Now, they may have done some of that here. Did they do that here?
Some restaurants.
Some of it, kind of. Well, let me tell you, there were Nazis there. When I say Nazis, I mean Nazis. They were Nazis thereabout. Okay. And you couldn't get on a plane without a COVID vaccination card, right? And you couldn't, with some employers and some jobs, you couldn't come to the office and do your job without a COVID vaccination card. You needed to prove that you had a vaccination, okay? Now, what is interesting is that there were a lot of people who didn't want to get the vaccine, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm not going to ask which one of you did or didn't. I'll volunteer that I did not, never did, never will. But thank you. But what is interesting is this. The reason I'm pointing that out is this, that there was a lot of, I don't know if you saw it. Okay, I don't want to get into politics, but I just think this is very interesting. The mayor of New York City did a promotional video where he was talking about, if you get the COVID vaccination, you will get this little box of fries and hold up, wait, there's more. You'll get a hamburger with it.
Worth it.
Worth it, right? He said, so when you think vaccination, I want you to think hamburger and fries, that if you get a vaccination, right, then you'll get a hamburger and fries.
Yeah, where's my hamburger and fries?
Yeah, seriously. All you have to do is live in New York, John. But They use that tactic, right, to get people to get back. I know you're shaking your head. But when that didn't work, then they moved to coercion and intimidation and creating a sense of what in people? Fear. They made people afraid and they intimidated people. It created a great deal of uncertainty for people and for fear. And as a result of that, people then would, of course, acquiesce. People will give up their freedoms just simply to feel what? Safe. And if you doubt that, just pay attention to what happened the last 3 years. People will give up their freedom in order to feel safe. Never in the history of the United States have we ever brought a vaccine on as quickly as we did that wasn't proven, right? And whether it's effective or not, and whether it's having impact on people or not, because, okay, you can say it, you said it.
I think
Okay,
so.
well-
I'm going down a rabbit hole with it right now.
And I agree with you, but we're not going to go down that because we're not talking politics here, right? But whether we agree with that or not, what we do understand is that freedoms were sacrificed during that period of time. Yes?
Oh, yeah,
And would you say a significant amount of freedom?
yeah.
Okay, there were people who had family members who died in hospitals alone. You didn't have the freedom to go in and see them. Babies were born and family couldn't go in and see them. Parents who were in nursing homes and living their last days couldn't be seen. The best you could do is see them through glass. And you might say, well, yeah, it was all because of the pandemic and we had to do the responsible thing, all that. I get that, whether you agree with that or not. Were your freedoms restricted?
Yeah.
Yes. And you gave up those freedoms, whether you did it willingly or unwillingly, you gave up those freedoms for a greater sense of what? Safety. And it may not have been specifically you, but I'm talking about the overall population. Yes, John. What were you going to say?
You know, well,
Hurry, rewind.
Yeah, right.
just like you can't visit those in the hospital, whether they're newborn or on their way elsewhere.
Mhm.
All religious freedoms were restricted.
There's another great one. The peaceful assembly of people, the gathering of people to worship, that was I would say infringed upon, right?
Want your pastor to give you your last rites.
Couldn't do that. Right.
Yeah,
But did people willingly give that up in order to do the right thing to prevent the spread of the virus?
Yes.
Okay, I see you. That's okay. That's all right. Because we're not talking politics here. I'm just talking concept. The concept is that when people feel uncertain, when they are fearful, they will go so far as to give up their own freedom to feel what?
Safe.
The reason I mention this is because I want you to realize, to let it register how important safety is for people. People need to feel safe and certain, yes or yes.
yeah.
Okay? I'm not here to make judgment calls on the way one governor did it versus another, or the way one administration did another. That's a discussion for another time. All I'm here to talk about is the concept of the importance of safety and the fact that people will go so far as to give up their freedom to feel safe. So we're clear on that, right?
Yeah.
Well, your clients are no different. Those clients that you are trying to get are the same people who in most cases gave up their freedom to feel safe. So you know that it's important to them to feel safe, yes?
Yes.
So if you want to get more listings, if you want to work with more buyers in today's marketplace, then you need to help them feel what?
Safe.
Safe. We know that with interest rates changing as quickly as they did, as much as they did, that's never happened in the history of the United States. Has never happened. You are living through historical times right now. You realize that. Not only did you live through historical times with COVID and everything that happened there, but then the aftermath, and this is an aftermath of it. This is the economic reverberations or aftershocks of COVID. The interest rates were artificially pushed down, and then as a result of everything that happened because of putting trillions of dollars into the economy within a short period of time, it created massive what? Inflation, and that inflation then led to the Fed then say, well, oh my gosh, we've got to change what? Interest rates to try to curb or to halt what? Because we'll stop spending, so then it would stop what? It would stop inflation.
Well, and that's a de facto tax on everybody.
It is, of course it is, which creates greater uncertainty
Right.
because people feel it every time they go to the grocery store, the gas station, whenever they go to spend their dollars don't go as what? As far, and it creates greater what? Uncertainty. Oh my gosh, are we going to be able to survive? Am I going to be able to keep my house? Am I going to be able to buy a home? right? So there's great uncertainty in all of that. Enters who? You. Yes, Luz, what were you gonna say?
Just to add to that, even people that are qualified and have the means,
Mhm.
that fear and uncertainty can stop
Yes,
them.
it
you know,
does.
Because I had a client that was perfectly qualified everywhere.
Yep.
He says, well, no, because I'm afraid that my hours might be cut.
Cut.
And then I won't have the,
Income to make
pay,
a mortgage. Yeah. In other words, there is so much uncertainty in today's marketplace. We can either wait for the market to what? Change and therefore not be as much perceived uncertainty, right? Or we can go out there and present to people what?
Other options.
Certainty, options that create a pathway to navigate what it is they're trying to accomplish, so they ultimately feel what? Safe. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I'm spending this much time on this is because in real estate, I think we get lost on the basics and the fundamentals. And this is a fundamental. You people don't work with houses. You work with people. And if you don't understand people, you say, well, I really love houses. I got into the real estate because I love houses. I love showing houses. I love decorating houses. I love the construction of homes. It's fascinating. No offense, right? But it's that doesn't matter. A home sells a home, despite what Jack and I might believe, because I sold a lot of new construction as well. I always thought that I was the one that sold it. It wasn't me. It was the features and benefits of the home. And yes, my ability to present those to them. But if they were looking for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condominium and I was selling 3-bedroom, 2-bath ramblers, were they going to buy that home from me? And the answer is what? No, because they wanted a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo. The condo sold the condo, not me. But what you have to do is you have to convince that person who wants to buy or what? Sell, that they should work with you versus the what? Versus the competition. Versus Aubrey. Stiff competition right there. Well, the question is, how do you do that? Well, we have to create greater certainty. So how do we do that? I want you to write this down. How do you create greater certainty? Recognize that the number one human need, or needs, if you want to use plural, because I'm going to use 3 words here. The number one human needs, but they're all within the same concept or under the same umbrella. The number one human need or needs is acceptance, my A students in the room, acceptance, what else? Validation
Validation.
and
Trust.
acknowledgement. Acknowledgement.
Praise.
Acknowledgement. So what 3 words did you write down?
Acceptance, validation.
Yeah. They want to be accepted, they want to be validated, and they want to be acknowledged. How many of you identify with that? How many of you would like to be accepted? Would you like to be accepted?
Yeah.
How many of you dress like the crowd did? How many of you behave like your friends did? How many of you try to wear the current fashions? Or how many of you have purchased a home and say, oh my gosh, this has 1970s carpet. We need to update this, right? We need to get it into the 20th century, right? Or the 21st century. All of us try to what? Fit in. And the reason we try to do that, and there may be some of you say, well, no, I'm an iconoclast, I'm a lone wolf. I don't try to fit in. I would say, yeah, probably not so much. I get that you say that, but viscerally, instinctively, you want to fit in because your reptilian brain or your Cro-Magnon, your caveman and cavewoman brain says that if I'm not accepted, I'm not validated. What's the 3rd word? Acknowledged. If those 3 things don't happen, then somehow I'm going to what? I'm in what? I'm in danger. I'm in danger. So far, if you were to actually crack open that egg, so to speak, and look at it and see what your brain is actually thinking, if you're in danger, what did the caveman and cavewoman brain think? If I'm in danger, what did that mean? Danger of losing your home because you're not paying your mortgage? No, because you didn't live in a home. You lived in a what?
Okay.
You lived in a cave. You were afraid of what? Dying. How? Okay, so no shelter. Why would you have no shelter? If you're part of the tribe, you got shelter. The strength in numbers, you had your tents, you had your cave, right? But if you're not acknowledged, accepted, or validated, in other words, you're what?
Alone.
Isolated.
Isolated. You're alienated. You're pushed out. You're voted off the what? You're voted off the island. You're naked and afraid and alone, right? So you're alone, and the reptilian brain, right, says, oh my gosh, if I'm alienated, if I'm separated, I'm pushed out from my tribe, then back in the caveman, cavewoman days, the Cro-Magnon days, you would either be killed by what?
An animal,
By a beast or by another what?
another human.
By another tribe. Another tribe. They wouldn't accept you. You were part of the enemy. You got pushed out by your tribe. So they look at you and say, well, you're an enemy, so they would kill you. And your brain knows that, and it says that. That's why, how many of you understand why you resist the process of prospecting so deeply? I mean, how many of you have ever died from prospecting? Right? Yeah. Obviously, panic attacks, right? It doesn't happen. And yet you resist it to such an extent that it's as if you were going to die. Well, it is as if you were going to die, because your brain says that if I'm rejected, if I'm not validated and not acknowledged in a positive way, right? I'm alienated, then I'm going to what? I'm going to die. Now, on a logical level, on a conscious level, of course, do we think that? No, we don't. Of course we don't. But on a subconscious level, that's exactly what we think. And so we avoid the process of prospecting. What your clients are no different. They need to be acknowledged, they need to be accepted, and they need to be what? Validated. And when you understand that, and you can bring your version, the version who is a leader to the conversation, the potential conversation, who does that for people, Urbano, I tell you, you will separate yourself from the competition and you'll get business, regardless of what the market is doing. Because when people are acknowledged, when they are validated and they're what? Accepted, they feel what?
Safe.
They feel safe. And if they feel safe, they will stick with you. Even sometimes when you ask them to do things that initially seemed crazy. Think of COVID. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, go ahead.
I just was thinking, when you say they will stick with you, last night, my dog, when he heard all the fireworks, and
Yep.
he literally was walking where I was, and he was trying to be between my legs, but even when I take a shower, he wanted to stick with me
Yeah.
at all times.
Because he felt he would be safe with you, right? Yeah. Your number one value in any market, but especially this market, is to help people feel what? Safe. And when you understand that and you say, okay, well, if I know that, I acknowledge that, it's not my signs, it's not my cards. It's not my car. It's not the name of my company. It's not all of those things. It is who I am and the person I present to them. And ultimately, how do you become invaluable? You help people get to the next what? To the next level. When you can help people get to the next level, they know that, believe that, they understand that. They will do exactly what you tell them to do because they feel safe. Does this make sense?
Yes,
So the question is, how do we do that in the listing process? Yes?
yes.
Ask me the question.
How do we do it? And it's
Well, Luz, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's really, as I said, pretty simple. So I want you to write down these three words, or they're not acronyms. Some of them are letters. The first one is TAP. TAP. The second one is MAP. And the third is MVP. And write them just like I did there. I did that intentionally. Because this one is an acronym. These are just abbreviations, just words. Okay. What I want you to do, what I would love for each and every one of you to be able to do, is to stand up here and do what I'm about to do over the next 25 or 30 minutes. Because if you can do this, then I know that in any market, regardless of the situation, whether it is SOI or a competitive listing opportunity where you've got great competition, stiff competition like Aubrey, even though he's yawning during my presentation, slug him in the arm now. Tell him, don't do that. That even despite that, you are going to get the what?
Listing.
How many of you would like to get more listings? How would you like to take your first listing if you haven't taken one? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Then pay attention to this. There are really just three parts or stages to the listing conversation. And when I say this, I want you to just write this down. It's not a listing presentation. Write that down. It is not a listing presentation. It is not a listing presentation. It is a listing what?
Conversation.
Conversation. How many of you like to be presented to? Anyone? Yeah, no. Because when you're being presented to, it's a what process? It's a sales process. And nobody likes to be what?
So.
Nobody likes to be sold. But how many of you like to have a great conversation?
Yes.
Yes, right? So we have to look at it as it's not a presentation, it's a conversation. Because if in our mind, we treat it as a conversation and we present ourselves that way as a conversationalist, it's going to allow them to feel more what?
Safe.
More comfortable. And when we feel more comfortable, then we feel more what? More safe. Because people don't like to be sold, but they certainly like to have a great what? So the question is, well, what makes up a great conversation? Well, let's start first of all this. Where does the listing conversation, underlying conversation begin? Not the presentation, because it's not a presentation, right? It's a what? It's conversation. When does the listing conversation begin? Hold your thought, John, because I know you know the answer and I know you do too. I want this new group to think about that. When does it start? Okay, you say on the phone. What do you mean?
Well, when you first talk to the prospect.
Okay, when you first talk to them, okay. Anybody agree, disagree with that? Want to annotate that? Add anything to it? No? You agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, you're correct. At what point though? I would say it's in the what I call the pre-qualification conversation. That's when it begins. So they've agreed to the appointment. So after they say, yes, we want to meet with you because you seem to be different. I don't know what it is, but gosh, if we were crack open their brain and really get to the subconscious mind, they would say, Aubrey makes me feel what? Safe. But what Aubrey does is he sets the appointment and then he begins to ask some additional questions and gather information so that when he goes and sits down at the kitchen table to sit down with Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that he's able to do the tap, the thank you. So T, thank you. A, acknowledgement. And P, promise. Okay. See, Aubrey is setting himself up for success when he gathers information in the pre-qualification conversation before he ever meets with them over the kitchen table. He gets that information from them where? Over the phone. Just after he set the what? Just after he set the appointment. Now, I would suggest that as soon as you set the appointment, then you would say something like this. So, Brandon, thank you. I'm so excited to see you and Heather on Friday at 6 o'clock. Just before we conclude the call, could I just take a couple of minutes and ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Great. And then I'm going to ask him a few questions as it relates to what we're going to be talking about on Friday night. And you can say, well, what questions are you going to ask? We don't have time for that. I would tell you to go to your script book because there's a script book that has a pre-qualification what? Script. It'll give you all the questions that you should be asking in a pre-qualification conversation. When? Before you actually what? Go on the appointment. Because the listing conversation begins when? On the phone. And you don't have the ability to do this effectively if you don't pre-qualify them over the phone. When I say pre-qualify, I'm not talking about financing. I'm talking about asking the specific questions that you would ask per the script so that you're better prepared to come out and do this, which is very, very important, very effective. Does this make sense? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So it's called TAP. Thank you, acknowledgement, and promise. What would I thank them, acknowledge, and promise them?
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so thank them for their time.
Acknowledge their house.
Okay, acknowledge their house.
Promise that regardless of your decision tonight.
Okay.
I'll help you get your home safe.
Okay,
Something like that,
I like all of that, but I don't.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Promise that
Hey,
the appointment will be well worth their time and will lead them to a quality visit.
all great answers, but I don't like them. Because they're not the best answers.
Which one? Acknowledge
This is-
their
this is-
feeling.
Okay, so what was? the
Okay, I'll
question
talk more
again?
about that.
Acknowledge the difficulty, the concern,
Their
the
situation.
the atmosphere surrounding moving.
Maybe
Acknowledge
you're
their
doing this, but I don't like it yet.
Acknowledge their
Sorry.
concern.
Well, you said something that's interesting. Say it again.
Acknowledge their feeling.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Just maybe how they're feeling about the whole process.
How do I know what they're feeling?
Ask
That's-
questions.
that's you.
There you go.
Ask questions.
When?
All the time.
Yeah.
We just talked about it.
Before the appointment.
In the pre-qualification. In other words, you gave me answers in terms of what I would think of knowledge and promise. Those are general statements. I could say that to anybody, regardless of what I discovered or didn't discover in the pre-qualification. I could not do the pre-qualification and say everything that you just told me to say. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if I asked you specific questions in the pre-qualification and you gave me specific answers, and when you gave me those specific answers with your specific words and the things that were important to you, whether it was fear or excitement, whatever it was, and I used your words, I wrote those down. And then when I thanked you and acknowledged and promised, I used your words. And I acknowledged what you said specifically, not what I think generally. Which one would be more effective? Let me show you the difference. In the first instance, I'm just going to use general statements, platitudes, okay? In the second statement, I'm going to say things that we're all going to assume he told me. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Remember, the second statement I'm going to make is everything that he told me, and I wrote down the words. So the words that I'm using, when you hear those, know that he told me those words. That's why I use those words. So I said, Aubrey, first of all, thank you. I know you have a ton of choice in terms of who to work with. I know that you're crazy busy right now, and I promise you this, I'm not going to waste your time. So you ready to get started?
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
Now, in the pre-qualification, what I'm going to say to him right now, I discovered all of this in the pre-qualification, and I wrote these things down
On the phone.
on the phone. So when I sit down with him and his wife at the kitchen table, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say those things specifically. And do you think he'll remember those things?
Yes.
You better believe he will, because that's what he was feeling. This is important. He's expressing exactly his wants, his needs, his wishes, his hopes, desires, and his what? His fears. When I ask questions that get that to come to the surface, and I write those words down and those emotions that he's feeling, and then I regurgitate that back to him or repeat it back to him, how does he feel? He feels validated, acknowledged, and what? Accepted. Which means he feels safe. And the more I do that, the safer he feels. And the safer he feels, the more likely he's going to what? He's going to follow my lead and ultimately sign the contract. Yes or yes?
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Turn to your neighbor and say, it makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. So I say to you, Aubrey, so when we talked over the phone on Wednesday night, I asked you some very specific questions, and you gave me some very interesting answers. You said that you're really scared about what's going on in the economy, specifically with your job. And you said this is the first time that you've sold a home. This is the first home that you've actually owned.
Yes.
But you feel like, based upon what's going on and the fact that your company's probably at a downsize, it's probably the best time for you to sell your home and kind of do some financial restructuring.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And I just want you to know, I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge the fact that you're feeling that way. A lot of people are feeling that way right now, and I promise you this. That we're going to put together a very specific plan to meet your specific needs and to make certain over the next 60 to 90 days that your home's going to get sold for as much money as possible, so that we can get you and your wife on to the next level, to the next chapter of your life, so you've got greater safety and security.
Yeah.
So are you ready to get started?
Definitely.
Great. Now, is he going to feel different when I say that to him versus, hey, I acknowledge you're busy and I know you have a lot of choices, and I promise you at the end of our conversation, you're going to know that I'm the best agent for the job of selling your home. Which one does he feel better with?
The one that you are acknowledging all.
Yes.
that is going on.
Remember, the number one human need is what? Acceptance.
Validation, acknowledgement.
Right? And when I do that and I use his words, just remember those words that I was using, words that he used, I wrote them down. I gave them back to him. How do you feel? How would you feel if those were your words?
I feel
Feels heard.
very accepted, very,
Right.
I heard it called empathetic listening.
It is. It's empathetic listening. That's exactly what it is.
But for you to know that, you need the pre-qualification.
You need to pre-qualify. That's why I asked, where does the listing conversation begin? On the phone when you pre-qualify. If you're showing up to appointments, whether it's with buyers or sellers, and you haven't pre-qualified them, you're starting at a great disadvantage. Great disadvantage. So thank you, acknowledgement, and promise. You only say things there, bless you, John. You only say, bless you, it's nothing to sneeze at. This is important stuff. The thank you, acknowledgement, promise is only given based upon information that they provided to you in the pre-qualification. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Please remember it. I've watched agents all the time. We have this conversation over and over and over and over again. And I say, okay, do the thank you, acknowledgement, promise. And then they just say that boilerplate stuff. And you can do that, but the problem is that does not separate you from the competition, because your competition is not doing that. They're doing what you did before I showed you what you should do. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, what are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, it just takes some confidence to get to that point. I feel like
That's it?
as an agent, yeah, saying those things to them, I mean, you can be personable with them, but you wanna make sure that. you know what
Wait, so
you're
here,
talking about.
can I permit you to feel confident?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you ask the question and he gives you the information,
Yes,
he's telling you what you want to know.
yes,
Does he want you to receive that?
yes,
Does he want you to find it valuable and
Yes.
important?
yes.
Okay, so if he does and you take it and you give it back to him, how does he feel?
Feels like it's heard,
You should feel confident.
yes.
There's no reason you shouldn't feel confident if that was the exchange, that was the process. Because it's not about you, it's about who?
And
Him. And it's your job to help him feel safe. And the best way to do that is ask him great questions that give you an opportunity to give him an opportunity to tell his what? Story. Because when he tells his story and you listen, how does he feel?
heard,
He feels acknowledged, validated,
accepted.
accepted. Yes. Does that make sense? Yes, Jack.
Just a quick story. I used to go to sales meetings with my dad in Manhattan. He would sell telecommunications test equipment to big brokerages houses, Merrill Lynch, Price Waterhouse, just huge. And he always told me this. He said, you're having a conversation. You tell them what your product can do. You ask them questions to discern whether or not it's a fit. And never mentally calculate your commission. They feel it. He says, you're having a conversation. You're not selling
Right.
anything.
Right.
And if what aligns, if the fit aligns with the need, you will have a sale.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. It's called discovery. It's called discovery selling. I have to understand what are their wants, what are their needs, what are their wishes, what are their desires, what are their hopes, and what are their what? Fears. If I discover those things, right? It's called discovery selling. Then I can give them back that information. And when they get that information, how do they feel when I acknowledge it? They feel heard. And when they feel heard, how do they feel? They feel safe. So that's the thank you, acknowledgement, promise. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So the next step after we do that, I would transition. Remember, you asked me the question, well, how do we go from one topic to the next? I'm going to use a transitional statement. So as important as that is, Nick, let me, if I could I just kind of give you a roadmap of what we're going to talk about over the next half an hour?
Yeah, please.
Great. This is not an acronym. It doesn't stand for individual words. The map is basically, I'm going to tell them what we're going to do over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. You can call it a game plan if you want to. You can call it a roadmap. I don't care. Game plan, roadmap. Okay. This is the way I would do it. I would say to Nick, I'd say, so having said that, Nick, as important as that is, if I could, let me just give you kind of an outline of what we're going to talk about over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Great. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to have a conversation. We've done this a little bit. We talked about it over the phone about what you're trying to accomplish and some of the things that you're concerned about and some of the hopes that you have through this process. But I want to have a specific conversation really about what's caused you to decide to sell the home and really what's happening next, what you're trying to create for you and your family as you move forward. Fair enough? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then the second thing that I want to do is I want to talk really about, and this is probably the most important thing, what you expect me to do. In other words, what you believe I should do in order to get your home sold, to help you accomplish what it is that you and your family are trying to accomplish. Okay, so I know that you want to sell your home, right?
Yes, I
I
do
mean,
want.
that's obvious.
Yep.
My question is, what do you believe as a great agent I should be doing in today's unique market in order to make that happen? I want to make sure that you and I are having that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. And then, once we've done that, then we'll just take a look at the market. Where it is today, where it was maybe over the last year, and where it's going to be over this next 60 to 90 days. And then you and I are going to work together as a team, Nick,
Yep.
to determine the value of your home in today's marketplace, so we can set a price that will actually cause it to sell. So we can actually get your home sold versus the competition. And then once we've done that, we're just going to complete some paperwork so we can get the process started. So are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Great. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Questions, thoughts, observations?
What
None?
was the P again?
P is paperwork.
Oh, okay.
So M is market. And I'm going to go through these specifically. Value and paperwork.
So the close.
Well, not quite,
Not
because
quite.
I've already done that, but I'm going to show you that here.
All right.
So let me just demonstrate this part here, the roadmap. So I gave him the roadmap, said, this is what we're going to do. Now we're actually going to start the journey. So Nick, let's have that conversation. So I know you mentioned that you're a little bit concerned about your job and about the economy, and you feel it's best for you and your family to get the home sold, capture equity, and maybe rent for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already found a rental.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit more about that. Just what you're trying to accomplish, when you need to get the home sold, what you were hoping to get out of it, and ultimately when you'd like to close and make that transition.
Yeah, so I owe just under 400,000. I think
Okay.
value's about 1.4. And so,
Which, by the way, congratulations.
thanks.
I mean, that's phenomenal. You got that much equity. You bought right, and obviously you've been very conservative and paid towards the mortgage very effectively in a short period of time. So that's awesome.
It's about $1 million in equity. And we've got this house just down the street. It's a little bit smaller, but I think it'll work great for the family. And rent is $2,500 a month. So that.
Oh, wow.
That $1 million will last us a long
How
time.
much, how much will that save you on a monthly basis?
It really doesn't save us much necessarily on our mortgage. Our mortgage payment it's actually 2,300, so it'll be a little bit more than our mortgage,
Okay,
but we'll have
you
that
have that cash.
cash.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. Well, as important as that is there anything else that you feel is important about that process or we're trying to accomplish that would be good for me to know?
No, if we don't sign, well, we haven't signed the lease on this house yet, so
Okay.
if we don't sign it, they're kind of holding it for us, and I think I can give them some money, but we probably need to have the property sold within 60 to maybe 90 days at the most for
Okay.
us to work.
Okay, so maximum 90 days.
Yeah,
Okay, well, the good news is we can certainly do that. We just have to put together a plan to make certain that happens. So we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, then having said that, then I'm gonna go from what's caused you to decide to sell your home, what's happening next, right? That was the question. So share with me, what do you believe that I should do in order to actually make that happen? Get your home sold in the next 60 to 90 days?
I don't know, John, you're the expert.
Thank you. Isn't that what they would most typically say?
Almost every
Right?
time.
Yeah, they do. And this is how I'm going to respond. Listen to what I say. And then I can repeat some of this for you, but listen to what I say, okay? So don't write it down, just listen. Nick, you know what? You're absolutely correct. I mean, the good news is that my company and we sell over 4,000 homes a year.
Wow.
And you're only looking to sell how many?
One.
One. So we certainly do know how to get homes sold. But what I've discovered over the years is this. I mean, and you can relate to this because you're married, that anytime we're in a relationship and the other person has a set of expectations, and if we don't discover those expectations, we don't acknowledge them, and if we don't meet those expectations, let's say the expectations are here and our performance is down here, you know, in a marriage, what they call that gap?
Divorce.
Divorce. It's exactly right. They call it divorce, right? And unless you're looking to get a divorce, you want to make certain you understand people's expectations, right?
Sure.
So I get it that I'm the expert in, you know, my company and I sell a lot of homes, but you still probably have some expectations. So if you had an idea as to things that would be important in today's market to get a home sold, what would you guess would be important? Now, notice what I did. I didn't give him the answers and say, okay, yes, I'm the expert, so let me tell you what's important. I kind of gave him anybody of you play T-ball when you were a kid? You know, it has the stand and they put the ball on it. It made it easier to what? Hit it. They didn't pitch it to you. They put it there. I just did a setup for him. I just teed it up for him.
Okay,
So if you had an idea, what would you think it would be?
Well, I need to know what I need to fix on my home, what things I need to change.
Okay,
I'm guessing probably, an open house every Saturday and Sunday with balloons and
you grilling hot dogs out front.
Right, the chicken soup.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Okay, all right. So really what I hear, and this is, I'm gonna be writing this down when he's talking, because number one human need is what? Acknowledgement. He needs to be acknowledged. So he's telling me these things, I'm writing them down. Right, nodding my head. This is important. This is the subtle stuff that makes the difference. I'm writing down what he said. Okay. So open houses every Saturday, you and hot dogs, chicken soup, whatever he said, right? And I'm acknowledging it. Okay, great. So what I really hear you saying, Nick, is that marketing is really important.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right. So let's set that aside for a moment. Marketing is important. Is there anything else that you believe that I should be doing in order to get your home sold effectively? You could say, no, I can't really think of anything.
Can't think of anything.
Okay, so if he says that, right, I could decide to just focus on that, or maybe if there's something else that I know might be important or could possibly be important, I could maybe suggest it. Yes or yes?
Yeah.
Maybe you remember Columbo, if you're old enough. Remember Columbo? He was a detective cop sort of thing, right? And what would he do? Do you remember? He would ask what sort of questions? Leading questions. He would lead the target, what do they call him? The suspect. Thank you. He would lead the suspect to the answers based upon the way he asked the questions. They were leading questions. So this is a leading question that I'm going to ask Nick. This is important to ask leading questions. So Nick, you basically, we talked about marketing. We set that aside for just a moment. Let me ask you, would communication be important to you? Do you think that's going to be important in the process of us working together and meeting your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I would think I'd expect to hear from you at least once a week, if not more.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna write that down. Communication is important at least once a week. So let's set that aside. So at this point, we've got marketing is important and communication. Is there anything else? And at this point, say, nope, can't think of anything.
Can't think of anything.
Great. So Nick, if you felt absolutely comfortable and confident in terms of the way my company and I market, and you feel comfortable and confident in the way that you and I are going to communicate, how would you feel about us working together?
Feel good?
Feel good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, then, so let's talk about those two things. Now, notice what I did. I got him to acknowledge what the decision is going to be based on, which was what? Marketing and communication. Okay, and now all we're going to do is talk about those things and make certain that he feels what? Safe, comfortable relative to those things. So then the inevitable is he's going to what? He's going to sign a contract. So I would talk about marketing with him. So Nick, we've got marketing and communication. So when you say marketing, tell me more about that. You talked about the open houses. So share with me what's important about open houses.
I just want to make sure we get the most exposure as possible. I see a lot of my neighbors doing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And ultimately, really, that's what it's about, like getting maximum exposure.
Yeah.
So doing whatever it takes, doing the things that are most effective to make sure as many eyeballs are on your home.
Right.
Okay, great. You know, it's interesting. A lot of people think that it's effective to do open houses. I mean, when I got into business 30 years ago, that was probably the primary way to market, expose a home. But we've come a long way since 1993.
Sure.
And the fact is that, especially in today's world, what I'm seeing is that most people are shying away from open houses, especially because it exposes their families to a lot of uncertainty where they let strangers into their home. I've had clients who have over the years, not recently, but because I suggest that they don't do open houses for this reason, that people come through and will take prescription medications, family heirlooms, jewelry, and things of value, unfortunately. And as much as we work to try to control all of that, the fact is that there's still an opportunity for people to do that. And even though that is the case, if an open house was absolutely guaranteed to get a home sold, as you might imagine, the only way I get paid is by what?
Selling the house.
Selling the home. And if I knew with absolute certainty that an open house was going to sell the home, do you think I would do it?
For sure.
Of course I would. No big deal. Take 3 hours on a Saturday, hold the open, get the home sold.
Yeah.
But what I know is this, in today's world, they're not really effective. And really what they do is they unnecessarily expose your family to dangers that we don't need you to expose yourself to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So really then the question is, well, John, what's the best thing to do? Well, the best thing to do would be to make certain that where people are actually finding the home that they buy, that they're finding your home there. Do you know the number one place that buyers are finding homes today?
Zillow.
Online. Yep, online. The various websites, certainly Zillow, Realtor.com, the number one site in the world is Century 21. with, 90 countries with 150,000 agents and over 15,000 offices. Century 21's website is the #1. You have that army of 150,000 agents. We need to make certain that your home appears online, exposing it to basically the world, not just people who might be driving by. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Because if you've got people just driving by versus the entire world seeing your home with professional photos and a drone video showing your home just as beautiful as it is, doesn't it seem more likely that you're actually going to get the home sold and not expose you and your family to unnecessary challenges, people stealing from you or taking prescription medication?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
So the good news is this: we sold over 4,000 homes last year, and we didn't do that by holding open houses. We did it by following our marketing plan. If I told you that your home was going to be listed on over 300 websites, would you want me to do that?
Seems like enough.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna do, including the Zillows and all the others.
Right.
Okay, so as long as we're marketing, exposing the home that caused us to sell 4,000 homes, you believe we can get your home sold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm absolutely confident that we can. And if you absolutely insisted, Nick, that I do an open house, I would, and I would do my best effort to make certain that your valuables weren't in danger, but I can never guarantee anything. So would you like me to do an open house?
We might be moved out by then, so
Okay,
home could be vacant, yeah,
then that's great. If the home is vacant, I'd be happy to set up an open house. Fair enough?
fair enough.
Okay, great. So if the decision's based upon marketing, how do you feel about us working together?
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
You mentioned communication. So tell me more about that. What's important about communication?
Yeah, I just want to hear from you and kind of just know what's going on, get a market update. So on a weekly basis, I mean.
Okay. So you say,
Feedback on the home,
okay, so a market update. So what's the market doing?
yeah,
So maybe any new listings, any that your home would have to compete with, what the price is on those probably?
right, yeah.
Okay, and then feedback on showings.
Yeah,
Okay, so what the buyers are saying as well as what their agents are saying?
Yep.
Okay, and then how about if I shared with you also what I'm doing to market, expose the home?
yeah, that'd be great.
Here's one of the cool things about what I do in terms of marketing that most agents don't. In fact, very few do. Most agents will use the 3P process. They put up a sign, they put it on the MLS, and then they pray. Okay,
Good, right, yeah.
yeah, it's good they pray, and I use that process, but I add one more P. It's called prospecting. Most agents don't. So my job is to go out there and actually match a buyer with a seller. And so every day I'm on the phone prospecting and door knocking, trying to find people who want to buy your home. So given the choice between an agent who does the 3P, where they at the end just pray and wait for somebody to call, versus an agent who's proactive like myself, calling and door knocking, which one would you prefer to work with?
Oh, yeah, you, of course.
Okay, great. So if I'm giving you updates on what's happened in the market, what the agents are saying about the showings and what the clients are specifically saying, and I also update you on my prospecting activities, would that give you everything that you're looking for in terms of a weekly update?
Yeah,
Okay, great. If we had that conversation, say once a week on Fridays at 1 o'clock, would that work for you?
yeah, that's great.
Because that's when I actually do this. And the good news is that what you're asking for, I already do it. So I'm not creating a system that's going to break what I do. I already do what you do because it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Friday one's great.
Okay, great. How would you like to communicate? Because some of my clients say just text, some say just email, some will say, well, no, I'd like to actually have a conversation over the phone. What's best for you?
Conversation's great because then we can tap my wife in and just talk and ask any questions we have.
Okay, great. So if I were to send you some information, kind of a report that you could digest beforehand, and then we could talk about the specific detail that's in that, and the three of us could talk over the phone, would that meet your expectations?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would expect relative to communication?
No.
Okay, great. So now that we've talked about marketing and communication, how do you feel about us working together?
I feel good. Yeah, I mean, I guess we got to talk about price.
Of course, yeah. So setting aside price, how do you feel about us working together?
Feel good.
Feel good. Okay. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 meaning not comfortable at all, John, 10 meaning absolutely comfortable and confident. How do you feel about us working together?
I would say a 9.
Okay, a 9. So pause for a second. Based upon what's happened so far, questions, thoughts, observations. Renee, anything?
I think it's going great. Probably at one point, I'm like, okay, let's sign the
Sign the
contract.
contract,
I don't know
right.
how long I would go.
Right. Okay,
Because I'm thinking he's ready to go, okay, let's do this.
yep,
Yeah.
yep,
So,
okay,
But he did have questions on price stuff.
He does, but that's why we set that aside, right? They say, yeah, but we still have to talk about price. That's why I said, so set that aside for a second. If the decision is just based upon marketing and communication, how do you feel? I feel a 9. Tell me a 7.
7.
A 7. Okay, for Nick, you're killing me and it's not your fault, but here's the thing. A 7 is really a 70%. A 70% on a test score is a C-. Are you looking for a C- chance of getting your home sold?
No,
You're not. What sort of chance do you want?
100%.
So you're not looking for a chance at all. It's absolutely necessary, certain. You need your home sold.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what is it that we didn't talk about or that we talked about that's not permitting you to say a 10? Because you deserve a 10. And I can tell you where I am. I'm absolutely certain that we can get your home sold. So you and I need to be on the same page. So what didn't we talk about? Or what is it we talked about that you're not comfortable with?
Oh, we haven't talked about commission.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that's what they'll say. I'll say, so great. So let's set aside commission for a second. So based upon what we've talked about, setting aside commission, if the decision is just based upon marketing and on communication, how do you feel about us working together?
10.
Great. Now, one of you said, it was you said the close. I've already closed it. He said yes. Now all I have to do is talk about what? MVP, the market, the value, and the price. What the untrained typical agent does is they allow the conversation to focus on 2 things. What are those 2 things? Price and commission. They allow the client, the prospect, the seller to decide to work with them based upon those 2 answers. Well, if that's what they focus on, then what pressure is there on price and commission? On price, what's the expectation? That it goes what? Up. And what's the expectation on commission? It goes down. Exactly the things that you know aren't effective to get the home sold.
Right.
And exactly works against what it is they're trying to accomplish. So if you don't take them through the process that I just took them through, then you leave it to those 2 issues right there, price and commission. And then when it comes time to get them to sign a contract, you're getting them to sign a contract that doesn't actually represent their best interest, and it certainly doesn't represent yours, because you're going to take a listing that's probably not going to what?
So
Probably not going to sell, because especially in today's market, it's going to be what? Overpriced for a commission that most agents aren't going to want to show the home for. So it's overpriced and you're offering a discounted commission. Why would they show that when they can show a home that's priced correctly at a 3% commission? Say they wouldn't. They wouldn't. You wouldn't, would you?
Nope.
When you got options, you're going to show the other options first. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I used that close that I used there on a scale from 1 to 10. How do you feel? Right? I call that a temperature check or a transitional close. It's a temperature check or a transitional close. Then allows me to go to market, value, and price. So Nick, let's just continue this. So let's just talk very quickly about the market, because we need to talk about that in order to talk about the price of your home. So the market over the last couple of years, you're pretty familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
What did you see was happening?
It's going up like crazy.
Like crazy.
Yeah.
Did
That's
you
why I
see-
have $1 million in equity.
Yeah, congratulations. Did you see what was happening with your neighbors when they were selling their homes?
Yeah. There was a line outside the door for the open house.
A line outside. It's crazy. And they were getting multiple offers on the home.
Yep.
Well, is the market different today?
I would assume so. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's different. You know, we're not seeing lines of people. We're not seeing 15, 20 offers on a home. But the good news is if we price the home correctly, we can still get multiple offers, which is ultimately what you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. As long as I get a good offer. I don't need 10. I just need 1.
You don't, that's right. But here, let me ask you this. If you have 2 people bidding against one another, what do you think is going to happen to the price?
I'll go up.
Right. So ultimately, if we could create a set of circumstances where you had multiple bids, probably best for you to have that.
For
Right?
sure.
Right. So what we need to do is you and I need to work together as a team. And I do this specifically. I'll say, you and I need to work together as a team. I do that back and forth. You and I need to work together as a team. Does this make sense? You and I need to work together as a team. I don't come in and say, well, I prepared this CMA and let me show you what your home is worth. Don't do that. You and I are going to work together as a team. And then what I do is I take my 3 top comparables that have been highlighted, the pertinent information. So the address, the list price, the sold price, and then the features and benefits, bedrooms and baths, that sort of thing, right? And then I present one to him at a time and ask him to acknowledge it. So you see this home here? See the address there?
Yep.
And how far away is this one from your home?
Oh, it's just up the street.
Yeah, just up the street over on Primrose, right? Yeah. Did you know these folks, the Johnson?
Oh, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. And notice what they listed for.
Right, their house is a piece of crap though,
It really is. I looked at it
Yeah.
online. It's certainly not as nice as yours.
not even close.
Yeah, not as nice. And notice what they listed it for and then what they sold it for.
Right,
They actually got more for it than what they actually listed it for.
wow, that's surprising.
Well, do you want to know why?
Yeah, because the buyers didn't know the plumbing problems.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the case. Well, actually, what happened is this, because we actually sold that home. Their home was actually listed at market, and what ended up happening is they had multiple offers on it,
That makes sense.
and so it caused the price to go up. And that's what we talked about, right?
Sure, yeah,
Okay, so, and you see how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms on that one?
right,
Right, okay, here's the next home. And I want him to acknowledge all the information again. Why do I want him to acknowledge it?
Value.
well, he's taking ownership of the price.
Yeah, in other words, it's not my information. Whose is it now? Because he saw it in black and white. I get him to repeat it back to me. Right? You see the price. Oh, yeah, it was 900,000. And what did it sell for? 875. And how many days did it take? It took 62 days.
Yeah.
Right? I want him to repeat that back to me. That's why I highlight the information and have him acknowledge it. Make sense?
Yeah.
Because if I just say, hey, I've done the CMA, this is the price, whose information is it? But when we work together as a team and I've highlighted and I show it to him, he begins to take what? Ownership of it. And when he has ownership of it, it's more likely that he and I are going to walk together towards the same end. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we've gone through all three comparables and then I asked him, so based upon what you see here, what price do you feel we should list your home at to create value in the eyes of a buyer and get them to decide to buy your home versus the competition?
I guess we probably need to go like 1.3. I was thinking 1.4.
Yeah, and well, and here's the thing that you could try that. The problem is we're in the sort of market where the longer it takes you to sell your home, there's a possibility that the less you're going to get for your home because we're seeing prices soften. They've certainly softened over the last year, right?
Yeah, so do you think I'm okay at 1.3 or do we have to go lower than that?
Okay, so it depends upon the real answer, right? If I believe that it's less than 1.3, then I'm going to tell him that. Now is the time to tell him that. Don't be afraid to stand up for the what? For the right price, because if you don't, who's going to be the bad guy or gal when you have to have the pricing conversation? The
You.
price reduction? You will be. It's better to have that conversation now and future pace him, set his expectations now as opposed to when? Later, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, when he's already expecting this home to be what? Under contract and sold. So if it should be listed for less than, then say it. So let's assume that I believe it should be 1250, 1.25.
Okay.
And you said 1.3. I'm going to say, Nick, that we're pretty close, but here's my concern. In today's marketplace, a home that is even slightly overpriced is substantially overpriced. Okay, because there's so much uncertainty in the market, interest rates have gone up, and buyers have the ability to choose from more homes today because they're not having to compete with 15 or 20 other buyers on the home.
Right.
So what we want to do is we want to create an opportunity where we get as many people to look at your home and then bid against one another. So this is what I'm going to suggest. I believe that your home is worth 1.25 based upon these comparables. Now, this is a very strong guesstimate. Ultimately, we never really know what the value of a home is until a buyer actually what?
Right, it's not.
It's an offer on it. But based upon what we see, I believe that this is the price. Okay, what I'm going to suggest is that we list your home at 1.225. And here's why I'm going to suggest that, because we want to create an opportunity. We have multiple what? Offers. And if we have people competing, then the idea is that we can get them not only to go to the 1.25, that maybe even get them to your price of 1.3. Okay, and here's the safety net. Here's the cool news. You don't have to accept any offer on your home if you don't like it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
So you might say, well, John, I don't want to accept an offer at that price. Absolutely not. I want to sell my home for that. That's great. You don't have to.
Yeah.
All we're doing is trying to invite as many people in as possible, get as much interest so that they come in and make an offer and compete against one another so we can get you the price that ultimately you would prefer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, great. So based upon that, how do you feel about listing today at 1.225?
I don't know. That seems really low. I think my wife and I need to talk about it.
Okay,
It's quite a bit less.
all right. Well, and I get that. If I were you, I'd feel the same way too. So I guess since 3 minds are better than 2, why don't we just talk about it together? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that the 1.225 is too low. I mean, I
Okay.
think the lowest I'd want to start is 1.25.
Okay,
I don't know if I'd want to go much lower than that.
okay.
Look, we don't have to sell.
Right, you don't.
Yeah.
You're right. And that's the great position that you're in. So congratulations. And I'm absolutely okay listening at 1.25. If we go 30 days and your home isn't under contract, knowing that you want to get it closed within the next 90 days,
Yeah.
right? How are you going to feel about a conversation of reducing it so that we can actually get more interest in it? I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's going to be necessary, but I
Right.
want to understand how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think after 30 days, we got a conversation.
Okay, so what if we did this? What if we went ahead and listed it at the 1.3? But signed a price reduction for 30 days from now, but I'm going to do whatever and everything that we normally do to market exposure home. So that we can get you an offer at 1.3, but if we don't, then we'll automatically put that price adjustment into place 30 days from now.
It's fine.
Great,
I'm good with that.
cool. Well, then all we need to do now, Nick, is just complete some paperwork and get your home on the market so we can get you into that rental so that you can feel safe and secure and move on to the next chapter of your life. You ready to get
Let's do it.
started?
I'm ready.
Cool.
As
Great.
for commissions, Nick, ask him to reduce his commission.
Hey, tell him Joe Smith down the road is gonna list it for 1.3.
Yeah, ask, so I want to see what he's going to say. Come on, you ask that.
We can do that. You're gonna ask a question and we can do that.
I absolutely love the strategy of lowering a price and attempting to get multiple offers because. And I understand that the seller ultimately has the say.
And it's
But I-
important they understand that.
Sure. But I think that just for the sake of listing, conversations. When you have 2 or 3 or 4 buyers. Human nature creates an urgency because now immediately and instantaneously, both buyers feel like they can lose.
Right.
And now there's an urgency, now there's and they'll do.
What they wouldn't
More.
otherwise do.
That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah, it's called competition.
It's like, have you ever heard the story of? You put an I-beam between 2 skyscrapers. It's stormy, it's wet, it's, windy. What gets you to walk across that I-beam? $50? No. What if somebody's holding your child on the other side and is ready to drop them? Then you go over.
Right,
It creates
Urgency.
urgency.
right, absolutely. Yep, and that's the importance of the competition, pricing it just a little bit below market. So you said, well, Nick, give him an objection like,
Yeah.
or whatever you said. So just give me one of the objections.
Commission.
We haven't talked about commission.
We haven't, and notice I didn't, because all I do is I say, so here's the paperwork, I've highlighted the pertinent information. And he sees it, and I don't use the number, it's highlighted, he sees it, he's going to sign it, I don't raise the issue. If he has a question about it, or he's gonna have an objection to it, he'll say something. But here's what I will tell you, if you are consistently getting people objecting to the commission that you have on your contract, what have you failed to do?
Great value.
That's the answer. You create,
Usually not.
you have failed to create value. If that is happening to you consistently, I can tell you, when I take people through the process that I just took Nick through.
It's not a
And granted,
conversation.
it is not a conversation usually. I rarely get people to do that.
So in other words, you're saying, when you're handing him the paperwork, they can see your commission.
Yep.
So you never bring that to the table, it's there, is, and if he doesn't say anything, we're not.
He's good with it.
Yep.
He's good.
So, well, what is your commission?
John, it's a great question. It's here on the, well, at what point are you asking me that?
Ready to sign.
No.
Ready to sign?
Yeah, what I'm saying is most agents outside our company are charging like 4 or 5%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What are you actually charging?
So again, I'm going to ask you, at what point are you asking me that in the listing conversation, right? Oh, I'm charging 7%.
He's just curious.
Oh, yeah, I'm charging 7%. That's where I start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so Luce, what she said, what he's saying is he built so much value. And they'll see the highlights of it and they'll sign it.
here, I'll give you a really good example of this. This happened about 8 years ago, and I'm trying to remember the agent. You two in particular may remember this. Nick, you may remember it as well. An agent who was brand new in the business. Joined this company as a rookie, brand new, never sold any real estate. Was trained and coached to ask for a 7% commission. Sat down with a broker before they went out on this listing appointment. And the agent asked the broker, the manager, what commission should I ask for? And the manager said, 7%, 8%, 10%. I don't care, but just go 7%. Well, he heard the manager say 10%. So when he went out and presented to the clients, he had on the contract 10%. He took it at face value. He came back and he told the manager, he said, I got the listing. He said, great. Well, what commission did you charge? 10%. 10%? Yeah, 10%. You told me that. He said, I didn't tell you that. I said 7%, but I was joking. I said 8, 9, 10%, whatever. Just go get the listing. I was just excited you had an opportunity. They signed a contract for 10%.
True story.
It is a true story. Yes, I don't, do you remember who that was? Do you remember?
I don't remember who it was,
Yeah.
but I also think, go ahead.
So why does it?
No, wait, hold on a second. Why did that happen?
Because they didn't value.
No,
Fine,
preconceived.
fine, that.
Yeah, the mindset of the agent that they could go in, they could charge that. He wasn't afraid to ask that. He was told that's what you charge.
Just don't know what's.
Well,
He didn't know.
That happened with me at Coldwell Banker. I'd started there in like 2000 and I somewhere, it's like, yeah, we're 7% brokerage. Go ask for 7%. So we never talked about commission. I just always did 7%. Maybe there was a transaction fee.
Right.
At the end of the year, they're doing awards and whatever. And Brenda Jones is the recipient of the highest percent commission. And my eyes went,
What? How is that possible?
how could I have
Yeah,
done it? Because I didn't know any better.
well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
To John's point, we go on with this idea that they're gonna object.
Mhm.
So when they ask, how much is your commission? Then I get sheepish about it. Well, no, don't do that. You know, so that's why I asked John, at what point, if it were a valid question that a prospect was asking me in the conversation, John, what is your commission? It depends on when they ask me that as to what my answer is going to be. If they ask me that in the beginning, I would say, John, that's a great question. And here's what I know. That it doesn't matter what my commission is. If you don't believe that I can get your home sold, it doesn't matter what my commission is. Because if my commission was 0 and I couldn't get your home sold, how does that help you? And of course, the answer is what? It doesn't. So let's do this. The good news is the commissions are completely negotiable in the state of Utah. So you and I are going to get a chance to talk about what my commission is and come up with a commission that works for you and for me that's going to be effective to get your home sold. But before we do that, let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish and what you expect me to do in order to make that happen. Fair enough?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to do. I take control. I don't let them dictate, but that's what we're going to talk about right now. Let's go in order here.
What's comical to me is that Homey has put up a sign that says, hey, 3,500 instead of 6%.
Right.
And so that set some buyers' expectations for a time that their seller's agent was going to charge 6%. Meanwhile, the buyer's agent is also charging
Right.
3%. So, I mean, it was just comical.
It is
I've heard
comical.
multiple situations
It
where
creates-
sellers are like, hey,
So
I gotta pay
it's
6%.
confusion.
So, George, what would you do with a person call me and he says that he wanted to talk to me and I went to the appointment. He opened the conversation with, will you do 5%?
Mhm.
I mean, that's the opening.
Yeah, he's taking control and we can't let them do that. You can say, you know, that's a great question. I want to find out ultimately what you're trying to accomplish. But Luz, what I understand is this. If you don't believe I can get your home sold and you haven't bought off on the value of my company, it doesn't make any sense it doesn't matter what my commission is. Because here's the thing, obviously you want to spend as little money as possible getting your home sold, right?
Right.
I can refer you to agents who will charge you $7.95. So if you're looking for an agent who is going to be the lowest bidder in terms of cost to get your home sold, there are a lot of agents out there who will be the lowest bidder. The challenge is they're not going to get your home sold. Do you want your home listed or do you want it sold? Sold. So let's talk about what it takes in today's market to actually get it sold. And then you and I can talk about what commission is going to be necessary in order for that to happen. Make sense? And if they're not willing to have that conversation, then I'm not willing to sit down and have that conversation. I'm not going to let them dictate the process.
and frankly, if you fail, they fire you.
Right. Either way, it doesn't work out, right? If I succumb to what they want, right? Or I'm not going to sell the home. It's not going to happen. Or I save myself some time by not working with somebody who's not willing to follow my process. They need to follow your process. You know how to get the home sold. Yes.
So this kind of ties in with both of their comments and questions, but for instance, we have a FSBO across the street from our house that we went and talked with her about, and she was like, oh, well, we're thinking about listing with Homey because they're cheaper. How, she wasn't nasty or anything about it like
Yeah,
some FISBOs
They're usually
are.
not.
Yeah, but how do you bring up professionally that homie tends to sit on the market for a lot longer, or some agents won't even show homie homes because they charge, a 1.5% BAC, or how do you approach that without making them feel dumb or unimportant for wanting to go cheaper with homie?
Right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is not have that conversation with them at the doorstep,
Yeah.
right? I wanna sit down with them at the kitchen table and have that be a conversation within the context of the overall conversation. Because I have to build two things, rapport and value. And if I can address that issue within the context of having built rapport and value, it's much easier to address. But just superficially, just on the face of it, this is what I would do. I would say, so just imagine that you're a real estate agent and you're working with some buyers. And you are looking for properties for them to see. And one of the things, because this is your job, and this is how you get paid, you always pay attention to the commission that's associated with the home, right? And you're gonna see some agents where they've listed the property for a buyer agent commission of 3%, and then you'll see some at 2.5%, and you'll see some at 2%. You'll even see some for less than that. If you were an agent who was supporting their family based upon the homes that you sell, right? Which homes would you have a tendency to show?
The higher.
The higher commission one. So one of the disadvantages you have as a seller working with brokerages, discount brokerages like a homie, and there's so many others out there. There are actually, quite frankly, there are companies out there who will list it for much less than homie. I don't know if you know. They're all, it's crazy. But the challenge is that they're just listing homes. Companies like homie and other discount brokerages, their goal is to just list properties, generate buyer leads, then take those buyer leads and go out and find homes that are listed at 3% and make a 3% commission. So you think up front that it's in your best interest to list at that discounted amount. You think, well, I'm saving money. The challenge is it's going to cost you on the back end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it also, I would underscore, I was on the UCAR board of directors, I would underscore how savvy and important his presentation there was right then, because if I were to ask you the question, what's the standard commission in the state of Utah, what's your response?
There isn't one.
It should be that response, right?
Yeah,
It should be that
there-
response. You
there
can't say
isn't one.
6%.
But sometimes people say, yeah, if you list for less than a standard commission of 3%, you're not gonna get the listing, da, da, da. There is no standard commission.
Right.
There is nothing. And so the way that he phrased that is very important. He's speaking to human nature and saying that people are going to more likely look at something that if it's in their interest as the buyer's agent, they're gonna look at something that has a higher commission. Now, we can't influence commission, we can't state that, but he
Yeah.
can just state it as human nature, but there's no standard commission in the state of Utah.
Right. We want to incentivize people, right? And that's one way that we do.
So like hypothetically, like how long is your presentation? We go in for listing.
Should take about 40 minutes,
Okay.
no more than
And
that.
then, is that?
This is obviously taking longer because we break it down, we
Yeah.
talk about it, but yeah, about 40 minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So you kind of future pace for that, give me 45 minutes to an
That's right,
hour,
yeah.
depending on how many questions you have.
That's what I say. Our conversation won't take any more than an hour. In fact, it could take as little as 30 minutes. It just depends upon how many questions you have.
Okay.
30 to 60 minutes maximum. If it's taking longer than 60 minutes, you're saying too much, or you haven't built enough rapport.
Free fall.
Yeah, you haven't built a rapport and value in the time that you should have normally done that, and you're not getting traction.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, in the prequel. Exactly.
I've been in a listing 2 hours, but it wasn't because of me.
Yeah, they
It
talk.
took me an hour to walk through the dang house. 'Cause
Yeah,
They had to show me
talk.
everything, and as much as I'm, okay, that's great, let's move on.
Yeah.
But it was okay, because it was their time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still okay with it, and we did take the listing.
I'm okay if it takes 2 hours for a listing presentation conversation, as long as it's not 2 hours of you talking and them listening.
It's them talking.
Notice that the vast majority of what I took you through was me asking questions and giving them a chance to talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not me talking and telling, it's me asking questions and them telling me and then me responding to that.
And the question that will make you more money than any other is what's important to you about. ...
Right.
How we know you're having a good experience.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is working well. for you.
There's so much detail to all of this, right? And you could get lost in the weeds, but it's really simple. If you'll just remember the tab, the map, and the MVP, go back to the recording of this and watch how I did the actual map. share with me what caused you to decide to sell your home, what's happening next, and then number two, share with me, what do you believe that I should do in today's market to actually get your home sold? If you address those two things, give him an opportunity to answer those questions, you're going to build rapport and you're going to build value. People need to feel acknowledged, validated,
Appreciate it.
no,
Accepted.
accepted. And if they do, they're gonna feel what? They're gonna feel safe in a world that is what, especially right now, uncertain. If you in today's world, you can become, in our market, you can become invaluable if you will do that for people. That's how you take listings in today's marketplace. Okay,
So John Ciet coach Kathleen Bruno, who is my coach, and she does this, her listing take-in ratio is in excess of 90%.
yeah, she takes 9 out of 10 listings. And she consistently gets 6 and 7% commissions in California, which is unusual because most agents will roll over at 5 and 4.5%. And she sells 70 homes a year, and the vast majority of those are listings. And when she and I started working together, she sold 15 homes. That was the most she sold on an annual basis, and she'll do 70 each year now. And how did she do that? I'm telling you, it's this right here. If you will learn this process, I'm telling you, it is effective. I saw a hand.
Yeah, I had a question. So I had like a listing appointment last week. And they said, we're thinking about it, but we want to go with the open door.
Yeah.
They came back to me in the open door value, but they already purchased the home, was like 5,000 less than what I said to list it at. Did that price too low or?
No, I don't know that you probably still read it.
Yeah.
Here's what happens, homie will offer them that, then they come in and do an inspection and chunk that way down.
Yeah.
Open
I've
door.
seen it happen time
Open
and
door.
again.
Yeah.
I've also actually seen Open Door and those companies buy homes and then lose money on it too.
Yep.
Like they paid way more than what they're worth and then they've lost.
Well, and they did that through the transition, right? When interest rates.
It can happen.
Well, and then they'll change ownership and change the name and continue with the model. I mean, it's similar to what he's talking about, these discount brokerages that you see in Exit Realty, a Zip Realty, others that are like easy in, easy out, or low transaction fees. I mean, not every brokerage is the same. And for instance, yes, you get charged to split, but do you realize how much it benefits your business to have accounting and administrative assistance and all these other marketing things and international name and brand recognition and
All of those things.
it's just, when you get into the weeds of it, you can parse out and make the case.
If we were gonna have that conversation, if somebody objected to it with the commission, I would just use an example. I would ask you, what kind of car do you drive?
Mazda,
A Mazda, okay. And what model of the Mazda?
the 3.
3. Was there a cheaper car on the market that you could have bought?
Yeah.
In the Mazda 3? And I guess my question for you is, why did you buy the cheaper car?
It's reliable.
Reliable. In other words, it was going to meet your expectations. You knew it was going to provide for you what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right? The reason people shop, for example, at Nordstrom versus Walmart for their clothing is that they know the Nordstrom experience is going to be a better experience. They're going to get greater value. In other words, they get the value that they're paying for. Right? The reason you would want to invest in an agent like me versus a home or other discount brokerage is that at the end of the day, I'm going to get you more for your home. I would be concerned about a brokerage or an agent who's not willing to stand up for their own self-worth and they're willing to discount their commission. How strong are they going to be in protecting you and your equity in your home and defending their own interests? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes sense.
And I'm going to say that to the seller.
Yep.
I'm not just saying that to you. I'm going to say that to the seller.
Okay.
This is the other thing I'll say to the seller. I'm an agent and I have over the years, I've actually listed my home with another agent instead of listing my home myself, because I knew that using their process and getting me out of it where I'm emotional, right? And I knew that was going to screw up the process. I knew that if I listed with them, I was going to end up getting more money, even though I was going to have to pay the commission to them. I knew at the end of the day, I was going to get more money. So this idea that the only thing that we should look at is the commission is a fallacy. You need to take a look at what services and benefits you get from the agent, right? And what the commission is going to be, and what percentage of the list price do they actually sell the homes at? These discount brokerages will list a home at, X, but then they sell it for 94% of X. In other words, a 6% discount. But if you look at a full service brokerage like ours, we'll list at X and we sell it at 99% of X or 101% of X. People don't look at that. Does that make sense? So it's one of the things you should look at. Look at what the list to sales ratio is. On the listings that we take, and they compare that to a homie. Guarantee you that we get a higher percentage of the actual list price than a homie does. And yet they think that they're saving money by paying $3,500, $3,800. They're not, they're losing money.
Same with Open Door. if they
Same with
just-
any of those.
But Open Door was offering to purchase it, not
Yeah.
list it, right? They just buy it for that price. So
Yeah.
that's hard to compete with when
What are you
they're
doing
gonna buy
after?
it.
Let me help you buy
Just
it.
quote Maverick,
Shoes renting.
it's not the plane, it's the pilot in the box.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Hey, gang, great job of being here. Thanks for letting me take it over.